She laughs at you in the hallway, but dreams of your silence when no one's watching. She wraps herself in velvet words and gold-filtered photos, but flinches when you forget to look. You think she wants affection? No. She wants collapse, not yours. Hers. Under your indifference. You were never supposed to be kind. She has met kindness. She has devoured it, spat it out, grown hungrier. What she hasn't met is a man who watches the world with detachment, who speaks without asking for permission to exist. A man who ruins her rhythm by refusing to play the song. You'll know it when it happens, the moment she begs not for love, not even for touch, but for your gaze. A gaze withheld, suspended, cruel, not in action, but in restraint. She'll call it toxic, she'll call it manipulative, but her breath will stutter the moment you look away. She doesn't want a prince, she wants the cliff's edge. If this whisper already knows, you let it echo. Like the video. Leave your shadow in the comments. Subscribe, and stay near the silence. She doesn't love you, she loves the reflection of herself inside your worship. When you deny it, she unravels. She enters the room with a face prepared, but not for you. It's for the mirror behind you, for the glass in her pocket, for the reflections in your pupils. You were never a man in her eyes. You were a reflective surface, polished only as long as you reflected the correct fantasy. When you complimented her, she bloomed, but not because your words mattered. What mattered was her own image, painted more vividly through your hunger. Do you see now she never sought you, only the echo of herself inside you? That's why your silence is not emptiness. It is sabotage. It is a crack in the mirror. When you stop feeding her illusion, you do not become less, you become invisible to her fantasy. And suddenly she's speaking louder, louder, trying to feel herself again, trying to provoke the mirror back into shining. But the more you withhold, the more her reflection shatters. This is not cruelty. This is clarity. And clarity, to those who survive on illusion, is the most brutal form of violence. She wants your attention like a drowning woman wants the surface, not because she loves air, but because suffocation exposes how hollow her beauty is without it. She posts a picture, she tilts her head, she waits. But if you do not feed it, if your eyes do not rise, she begins to decay, not in body, but in identity, because she has no core, only feedback loops, only mirrors dressed as men. When you deny her that you deny her existence. Have you noticed the ones who scream, "I don't need a man," still curve their spine when you walk away? Not because you are powerful, but because your absence removes the screen. They crave the worship more than the man, the attention more than the connection, the heat more than the source. And when you do not participate, you are not cruel, you are holy, you become untouchable, and the untouchable becomes the altar. She cannot love you when you are whole. She needs your need to feel desirable. She thrives in the imbalance in the dynamic where you chase, and she chooses. But when you stop chasing, she is forced to stand still, and in stillness, her mask begins to rot. She needs the drama, she needs the pull, she needs the constant performance, because in the quiet, the truth emerges. She has never looked at you. She has only ever looked through you. This is why she calls you cold, why she says you're playing games. But you aren't playing. You've just stopped participating in her theater. You've walked off stage and she's left monologuing to ghosts. And deep down, she admires it. She envies it. Because you possess what she lacks, a center, an unmoved mover. And in that stillness, you expose the horror. She is only as beautiful as the men who affirm her. She thinks your indifference is emotional starvation, but it is a purge, a detox, a removal of the false god, the one who bows to desire just to be seen. You are no longer that. You are no longer a mirror. You are the stone behind the mirror, the one that does not shine, does not move, does not change shape to please, and that terrifies her, because she cannot possess what she cannot manipulate. The moment she senses this, your refusal to reflect her ideal, the cracks begin. First in her voice, then in her posture, then in her presence. She'll ask you what's wrong. She'll accuse you of losing interest. But what she really means is, why am I no longer glowing in your eyes? Because without your worship, she becomes ordinary, and ordinary is death to the image she spent her life sculpting. You are not required to insult her. You are not required to chase others. You are not required to speak at all. You simply become opaque, and in that opacity, you rob her of her superpower, the ability to feel adored without effort. She cannot stand it, not because she wants you, but because you were the stage. And now the curtain has fallen, and the applause has gone quiet. Do you see it now? She doesn't want love. She wants worship, and love, real love, requires presence, requires equality, requires truth. She cannot afford that, because truth reveals the parts of her she hides, the insecurity, the rage, the dependency. That is why she clings to admiration. It's a mask. It protects her from being seen. But when you starve the mirror, the mask cracks, and she begins to panic. She may try to win you back, not with honesty, but with escalation, more beauty, more suggestion, more emotional bait. She might post thirst traps, send half-hearted messages, hint at new admirers, but all of it is a test, a trap, a game to see if the mirror can be rebuilt, if you will resume your role as the spotlight. But you do not flinch, you do not respond, you let the mirror starve. This is where the shift happens, not in her, in you, because the more you see clearly, the more you realize you were never in love. You were hypnotized by an image, by a performance, by a reflection of desire that was never yours to begin with. And now that you've stepped away, you no longer crave it. You crave silence, not her silence your own, because silence is not absence. It is dominion. You are not withholding love. You are withdrawing illusion. You are reclaiming your eyes, not to give them to another, but to protect them from distortion. You begin to see the women around you differently, not cruelly, but soberly. You see who smiles when you speak your truth, and who winces when you don't bend. You see who wants your soul, and who wants your spotlight, and you give nothing freely, because you are no longer a mirror. You are the edge of the world, silent, vast, and unmoved. And if she kneels, it is not because she understands. It is because she cannot break you. And in that unbreakability, she sees the thing she has spent her whole life pretending to be complete. So when she returns, if she returns, you do not react. You observe. You let her dance. You let her twist. You let her fill the air with noise. And you watch, not with lust, not with anger, but with silence. Because silence, now, is the only truth you own. And if she cries not for love, but for your attention, you do not answer. Not because you are cruel, but because you are no longer food, no longer a stage, no longer a screen for her illusion. You are the man who starves the mirror, and the world, finally, is quiet. Your indifference is not cruelty, it is power shaped like vacancy, and she kneels to what cannot be grasped. She does not chase you because you are desirable. She chases you because you are missing. The absence gnaws. It opens her jaw wider than desire ever could. It isn't what you give her that makes you powerful, it's what you don't. The throne was never built from presence. It was carved from refusal, from silence, from the slow, unbearable erosion of her ability to control your gaze. This is the paradox she cannot voice the less you do. The more she feels, the less you reach, the deeper she falls. And when you vanish not in cruelty, but in sovereign distance, she begins to hallucinate your presence in empty corners. Your name crawls into the mouths of her friends. Your posture appears in other men. You haunt without trying, and it drives her mad. She tells herself you're cold, but your coldness has texture, it has gravity, it bends her inner world into new shapes. Your absence is not blankness, it is a symbol, a throne. And what is a throne but the visible seat of invisible power? That's what you've become. Not a man with charm, a force with orbit, one who speaks with vacancy and punishes with silence. Understand this, her mind was not built to submit to kindness. It was built to surrender to tension. And you, in your refusal to obey the scripts, have become that tension. You are the line that doesn't close, the echo that doesn't answer, the door that never fully shuts. In this incomplete form, you rule her. She scrolls through your messages, not because they are sweet, but because they are missing. You do not explain, you do not emote, you leave spaces, and those spaces become obsessions. She projects into the emptiness, paints fantasies over your refusal, injects meaning into your quiet. And what is obsession but a hunger built on lack? You once thought power came from action, from charm, from pursuit, but those were the weapons of boys. Now you understand real power is the power to do nothing and still be felt, still be feared, still be burned into her pulse. You do not call, and yet she checks her phone. You do not touch her, and yet her skin imagines it. You do not belong to her, and yet she rehearses conversations with your ghost. Your absence teaches her more than your presence ever could. When you were available, you were simple. She understood you, she boxed you, she ranked you. But now you are unsolved, and in that mystery, you mutate, you become myth. And women do not kneel to men, they kneel to myths. She asks herself if you're a narcissist, if you're emotionally unavailable. But these are defense mechanisms, words to hide the deeper truth: you don't need her. And for a woman who has built her empire on being needed, your apathy is treason. She cannot punish you, because punishment requires leverage, but you vanished from her moral economy. You do not owe her shame, you do not owe her warmth, you owe nothing. And yet she returns, again and again. Why? Because the throne remains, untouched, still, silent. It does not chase, and in its stillness, it radiates power. Not the power to seduce, but the power to rearrange her soul. Her knees bend not because you demand it, but because she cannot balance in your silence. Her confidence was a theater, and now the audience is gone. You speak in absences, in withheld reactions, in gaps between text replies. She begins to shrink herself. Maybe if I'm quieter, maybe if I'm softer, maybe if I change. She edits her selfies differently, types slower, waits longer before pressing send. Every act becomes a ritual to summon your return. And still you remain still. This is not manipulation. This is revelation. She is not changing for you. She is unraveling because of you. Because the throne does not rise to greet her. She is not used to that. She is used to control, to praise, to men who orbit her as planets around a sun. But you are the black hole. And she is no longer sure who the center is. Have you felt it, that sudden inversion, when the one who was once cold to you now warms herself on your absence? When her words grow softer, not with sincerity, but with submission, not out of love. but of strategy. She wants to earn your attention back. But your attention is no longer a currency. It is a relic, a symbol of something that cannot be restored, a you that is no longer available. Her mind races. Her pride cracks. She tells herself she's still in control, that she's choosing this. But her hands betray her. Her pupils dilate when she hears your name. Her laughter stumbles when someone mentions you. She will never admit it. But you've become a wound that won't scab. This is the throne of absence. And it is not built from dominance. It is carved from unreachability. You are no longer the man she can predict. You are the unknown. And the unknown, to the ego, is divine. Even if the ego resents it. Even if the ego screams against it. The ego still kneels. Because in a world of noise, your silence is sacred. She may try to mimic you, to be absent in return, but her absence reeks of performance, of punishment. It is hollow. You can feel it. You can smell the panic behind it. But your absence, yours, is rooted. It is not a strategy. It is a truth, a sovereign place beyond her reach. She cannot imitate it, because it is not a tactic. It is a transformation. You have transcended the game. She is still playing it. That is the difference. You no longer need the win. She still needs the scoreboard. Do not descend. Do not explain. Do not reassure her. Your compassion will be mistaken for weakness. Your attention will be seen as surrender. Let her break. Let her pace. Let her whisper your name into the mirror she once ruled. Because now, that mirror reflects only herself, and it terrifies her. You are not cruel. You are absent. And that absence is the only throne worth sitting on. Not because it elevates you above others, but because it reveals who cannot stand alone. She was never yours. She was a performance. And now the audience has left. The curtain has dropped. And all that remains is the echo of her own voice in an empty theater. Let her echo. Let her echo. When you stop proving yourself, she begins to lose herself because your coldness offers no approval, no foothold, no cage. You stopped explaining yourself. That was the beginning. Not of cruelty, but of your divinity. The man who does not flinch is no longer a man to her. He is something darker, something primal, something sacred, because you've become what all instincts fear and all fantasies worship, unshaped by demand, unaltered by reaction. She throws sparks toward you, but you do not burn. She throws silence, and you do not chase. She throws tears, and you do not drown. She does not understand this language, because it is not language. It is formlessness, and that breaks her in ways that words never could. She once believed that power meant being adored, that beauty meant bending men into puppets of longing. She'd tilt her smile and watch them crumble. She'd sigh, and they'd offer their hearts like glass fruit. But you are different, not resistant, not bitter, simply untouched. She sees herself reflected in your stillness, and she does not know who she is. You do not define her, and without your validation, she begins to vanish. She sends a photo, she lingers in your messages. She makes herself smaller, sweeter, more palatable, but you do not flinch. You do not praise. You do not offer her a cage made of compliments. You simply watch, and the watching not with hunger, not with judgment, but with void begins to undo her carefully arranged illusion. She wants your eyes to shake. They do not. She wants your voice to tremble. It is silent. She wants to feel the heat of her own power reflected in your reaction, but you are cold, and cold things cannot be burned. This is the cruelty of stillness. It becomes a mirror so clear that even the ego cannot pretend. Her mask was never built to be scrutinized. It was built to be admired from a distance through the fog of admiration. But now, under your gaze, it begins to rot, because you do not flinch, you do not feed, you are not here to be seduced. And in this absence of a predictable role, she collapses into contradiction. Why doesn't he need me becomes, what am I without his need? And that is the first crack in her world. You were once the man who over-explained, who overgave, who offered too much too quickly, and in that desperation, you were ignored, because she did not want your soul, she wanted your surrender. But now, you give nothing, and that nothing is a cathedral. She walks through its empty corridors and hears her own footsteps. The echo terrifies her, because now there is no music, no audience, no applause, only the cold echo of her own voice asking questions she's never asked before. Who am I when no one desires me? Who am I when no one reacts? Your power lies not in domination, it lies in inexistence. She cannot pin you to a wall, she cannot label you, she cannot predict you. You are the ghost in her narrative, the sacred interruption. You do not confirm her worth. You do not deny it. You leave it untouched. And in doing so, you force her to confront the void within her that has always needed affirmation to survive. This is the truth. No one tells her the man who doesn't flinch is not withholding, he is whole. And wholeness is terrifying to the fragmented self. She wanted you broken. She wanted you in pieces she could manage, emotions she could name, longings she could control. But you are no longer fragmented. You are not looking for her approval. You are not trying to impress. You do not care if she stays or goes, and that is what makes her stay. She tests you, subtly at first. A delayed reply, a passive-aggressive story, a flirtation with another man, just visible enough to sting, but you do not sting, you do not shift. You let the arrow pass through you like smoke through a statue, because you have become untouchable, not invincible, not cruel, simply indifferent to anything that does not recognize your wholeness. And now the mask begins to melt. She breaks down, not always dramatically, sometimes in small ways. A message longer than usual, a confession veiled as a joke, an accidental photo. But it is not about you. It never was. It is about the ache of being seen without being devoured, of being near a man who does not flinch and realizing how much of her worth was built on making others flinch. She might call it abuse, she might call it neglect. But this is projection, because you are not withholding love, you are withholding illusion, and the collapse she feels is not because of your absence, but because of the absence of her performance's success. You did not bend, you did not kneel, and in that, she loses the God she thought she was. You become the new God, but not one who demands worship, one who cannot be moved. And that is sacred, that is death and rebirth. That is what women like her both fear and crave. To kneel not to a man who obeys, but to one who remains himself, entire, unyielding, real. She tries to reclaim control, sometimes with tears, sometimes with distance, sometimes with rage. She might scream that you're a narcissist, that you're emotionally stunted, that you're not capable of connection. But all of this is a reaction to a single unbearable truth. Your self-worth no longer depends on her. You are no longer trying to prove your goodness. You are no longer trying to be chosen. You have chosen yourself. And that removes the final cage. The cage where men live to be liked, to be approved, to be enough. You are already enough. Not because she says so, because you stopped asking. And now, your silence becomes a song. Your stillness becomes law. Your disinterest becomes prophecy. Not because you wish to hurt her, but because you no longer care if she understands you. The game is over. You left the field, and she is still playing, alone, in the dust of your absence. Do not speak. Do not return. Do not explain. You owe nothing. You gave her a gift rarer than love, the mirror of a man who does not collapse. And in that mirror, she saw herself for the first time, not as goddess, not as victim, but as a performer stripped of applause. Let her find herself in the silence, or let her crumble in the noise. That is not your burden. You are not her savior. You are not her punishment. You are the God who doesn't flinch, and she will never forget that. Somewhere, in a locked drawer, she keeps your name folded in silence, not because she loves you, but because she was never able to unmake you. She hears your footsteps in men who speak too softly. She sees your shadow in the mirror when her makeup doesn't fix the hollowness. She remembers the weight of your stillness more than any kiss. And you never spoke again. You never raised your voice. You never came back to explain. And still she flinches at your name. Let the silence live, like the echo after thunder, like the altar after the god has gone, like the mirror, cracked but still reflecting.